All right, so we have a simple counter. All right, you can increment and decrement. So let's apply some best practices, right, so that we can break this up into different constituents files. Right. So for instance, let's get started first with these on click. Right. So creating this dispatch here, right? It makes the component kind of dependent on the infrastructure. Right? It should not have to know anything about this. Right? Instead, what we're going to do is that we're going to move that out of here. Right? We're going to deploy it, and we're going to move it out into a separate function. It's going to be passed in as an argument, right? So that the component is independent of knowing that it's using Redux. Right? Instead, somebody's passing it to it, right? So that this can be reused as an independent component. Right? So let's do that. Let's move this out. And what we'll do is that we're going to take as argument an increment and a decrement handlers. Right? Somebody's going to pass it to us. Right? And here we're going to create the two functions. Excuse me. And this will be const increment. It will be a function that the only thing it's going to do is it's going to return the dispatch. Right? It's going to do dispatch increment, and we're going to have a similar one for decrement. So decrement is going to be decrement. Okay. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to replace this. We're going to say that this is just increment and decrement. Right. But somebody has, yes?
Where does dispatch come from?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. This is an argument that is being passed in here. Yeah. Right. So somebody needs to pass dispatch to those functions, all right? And that happens in the mapper, right? The one that's going to map, right? Just like we're using a mapper that maps this value from the state, right? We need to do something similar for these event handlers, right? It's going to be, again, in the connect, right? Just like in the connect is mapping values in the state with values as in the properties, we have to do map the dispatchers, right, to the properties. So these are all properties. And somebody's gonna have to map this value by name. Right? It's gonna have to map the increment and decrement also by name. All right. So here in the mapper, we have to create a mapper. Let's see. Here we had we had hard coded the mapper for the values here. It's hard coded. That's not pretty. Let's do the mapper for the functions. Let's move this down here a little bit. Right, and let's create the mapper, and we'll say that we can pass it as an argument. Dispatch. Do we need this dispatch? I don't think so. Let me see. Where is it? Forget the counter app. Oh, okay, yeah, there it is. So the dispatcher will be something like const dispatcher to property mapper. Right, it's going to be a function that is going to take as argument the dispatcher. And is going to map, is going to return an object that's going to take the name of the property names, which is, I think, increment and decrement, increment. And this is going to be a function that calls the increment, the actual function. It passes the dispatcher as an argument. Okay? Oh, this is equal, sorry, equal. And same thing for the decrement. And so we'll look at the decrement, so decrement. So these are the names of the properties. So notice that this is a map, right? This is a map that has two attributes, right? It has two entries, a name-value pair. The name here, right, this is the key that is going to be mapped against the name of this property, right? When it does the mapping, when it parses this, it says, okay, you have three properties there, the value, the increment, and the decrement. What should the increment get, right? It should be mapped to this function, right? This function will be invoked, right, passing this as an argument, and it will pass the dispatcher as an argument here, and that's how these guys get a hold of the dispatcher. Okay? So once we have the mapper, we can pass it as an argument to the connect, the second argument. And let's see if we broke this. Okay, it still works. Right? So that's the dispatcher. Now this one over here, we did the mapping here. We did it kind of inline, right? Yes. They both what? Oh, I'm sorry. This is decrement. Thank you. Yeah, so this one over here, right? The first mapper. Notice that we wrote it inline, right? But that's hard to read. So ideally, we would put that in a separate function, right? Const. We'll call it state to properties mapper. And this would be state. And it would be this here, right? It would be this function here. It would return this right here. It would return that. So now we can replace this with the name of that function. We'll call it the state to property mapper. Okay, that's a little bit easier to read. The connect takes those two arguments and applies it and connects the counter. Okay, so let's, oops, value, state, what is it complaining about? Value of undefined, state, oh, sorry. There we go. Yeah, it still works. This could be read. This can be again using some of the syntactic sugar that is introduced in the new JavaScript version. If you only have one argument in a function, right, you don't need the parentheses. Okay, and since here we have no computation, right, we're just returning immediately a value. There's no need for that either, right? So this could be just a parentheses and a parentheses. So it could be something like that. Okay, let's see if that still works. Okay. Same thing for, let's see, here in the dispatcher, since we only have one argument, we don't need the parentheses. You only need the parentheses if you have many, many arguments. And again, since we're only returning immediately, yes, we only really need a parentheses, and here we just need a parentheses. So a lot of syntactic sugar in the new version of JavaScript, which is pretty cool. What else? Any other cleanup that we might need? Dispatch is just returning that. Increment, the reducer is just doing that. Very good. All right, I think that's it. All right, let's move on. Let's do some more cleanup. Oh, actually, we don't need this dispatcher now here, right? We don't need the dispatch anymore. Right, because we're not dispatching ourselves. Instead, we're delegating that, right, to a mapper that passes us and links those event handlers.